Yeah, the first spark of Notes to Future Self came about when my younger sister, who's a doctor, decided that she wanted to specialise in palliative care, so caring for the dead and dying. And I thought that was amazing, you know, I was so proud of her and really humbled by it. And I started reading up on the subject, and I read a lot of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and Cicely Saunders, who founded the hospice movement. And I read a lot of their books on grief and grieving, on death and dying. And I remembered that when Kim and I were little, we used to love stories like, there was a book that we loved called The Wagon Trail, in which a group of pioneers went across America and one girl died tragically. And you know, the childhood books that we always loved, like Charlotte's Web and Bridge to Terabithia and Why the Whales Came and Watership Down, all that sort of thing, they tend to have, you know, someone who's an animal or a death in them. And I think that a lot of children are fascinated by those type of stories because they teach you how to live or how to deal with loss and all the sort of worst fears of your childhood imagination, in a sort of safe space. And so when I was commissioned to write this play by Birmingham Rep, I instantly thought that I wanted to try and do something as moving as some of those childhood stories that I'd loved so much. And so, because when you say the line, this play is about a young girl who's only got a few weeks to live, it's sort of such a potentially depressing subject. I wanted to make it as colourful and as funny as possible. You know, so the play is quite fun. There's a lot of humour, a lot of different type of humour in it, and I made the family, the two girls were raised hideous kinky style, you know, in a series of communes and ashrams all around the world with this mother that they're slightly embarrassed by, who's a real new ager. And I wanted somehow to use all that that became a metaphor for capturing how, if someone is terminally ill, life suddenly becomes surreal and everything is sort of thrown completely off kilter. And so by having my family of hippies who were suddenly having to try and fit into the real world, that sort of became a metaphor for what it feels like or might feel like to cope with imminent death. I think the ending is uplifting. And as I said, I think that a lot of the time children need stories like that address the darker things in life. You know, so many fairy tales are really dark, really brutal, really, really creepy and really twisted, and there's something about the telling a story like that, about emotionally being with those characters, that helps us prepare for, you know, it could be the death of a pet, the death of a grandparent, the sort of first deaths that children encounter, you know, maybe in most cases tend to be maybe a pet, and those feelings are real, and by imaginatively and vicariously exploring and inhabiting this world, I'd say that you're learning how to deal with that a little bit. And so I'd say, you know, by all means, don't be scared that it's going to depress you. I hope that it's a very funny play and ultimately really redemptive. As well as being a playwright, I'm an author, and actually my second novel was published just last week. So I do work across both forms. I find them very different. When I first started writing, I blithely did both, and I thought, you know, it was really simple. But the more that I've written plays and novels, the more that I've come to realise how essentially different both forms are. If I've been working on a novel for a while, then my plays tend to be too speechy, you know, and then similarly a novel will have a lot of dialogue in it. I'll naturally start slipping into writing scenes rather than writing prose. That's the most basic sort of difference, but as well there are sort of fundamental differences in that a novel is a lot more interior and a lot more thoughtful than a play. A play is much more like a short story. It's like a live wire, you know, it's action. You're not writing reflection, you're not writing interior monologues or processes of thought. If you are, it's just dead on stage, you know, so the two forms are very different. And I find that it's quite a wrench moving from one to the other. at the same time, I think having spent a lot of time writing a novel where I'm just in the world and the whole world is inside me for so long, I crave that sense of dynamism and working in a play with so many people, you know, having the actors and having the director and having the composer and the costume and the lighting, all that sort of thing is so invigorating and so exciting. But I think after a while of working on a play, when it's also crazy and public and various, I crave that solitude again. And so I think the two, for me, working in the two forms balances itself out like that. Yeah, I think it's really exciting that when the rep reopens, it's going to be with the library as well. I think there's something really, really lovely about the idea that you can go and see a production and then you can go and see the original books, maybe see the original model books, see some of the documentation of that play, you know, see some of the original scripts, all the sorts of things that a library can preserve, all of those theatrical mementos, I suppose. It's a really nice idea as well that maybe libraries are so important. You know, libraries, when I was growing up, going to visit the library and getting out my books every week was, I think, one of the most important days of my week. And I think something that can bring new people into the library can only be a good thing. It's a shot in the arm. I hope that this play and that the world and characters of this play will seem as real and as important to people as Charlotte from Charlotte's Web, or as the sisters in Little Women, or the rabbits in Watership Down, or all of those characters that we really love. You know, the people or animals or characters that become part of you, that live inside you. The characters have certainly been very, very vivid for me as I've been writing the play, and I want people to come along and laugh and cry and ultimately feel like living.